Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we got a 74 Super Beetle that we're gonna do a tune-up on and whatnot. It hasn't ran in I don't know how many years, but quite a while, I guess. It's been sitting. I did manage to fill the carburetor up with fuel and did get it to fire and run to drive it into the shop, so that's a good sign. But first step we're going to do is I'm going to do the carburetor. I'm going to take that out, clean it up, rebuild it, and go through everything. I'll also be doing points and condenser and plugs and wires and all that stuff, but I'll do that in another video. So first, let's tackle this carburetor and taking it off the vehicle. As you can see by looking in here, it's, I don't want to say grungy, but it definitely hasn't seen attention in quite some time. So let's, first step here, we're going to take the air cleaner off. Thank God it's loose. Looks like somebody lost the original screw here and they put an actual bolt in there. So I don't know, I'll have to figure something out better for that. But that's always the issue when you start working on stuff. Some people should not be allowed to work on vehicles. Sorry, but it's true. And we had something pumping there. I usually pop the distributor cap off. That helps me to get in. Take off our vacuum line. I always pop the solenoid right out of there. It's gonna be maybe I won't get it out of there easily. Usually they're, I'll call it finger tight, where you can just grab it. This is the throttle cable. So we'll loosen that up. We've got our choke wire. We had our wire for the idle cutoff solenoid. Almost looks like this could be the original motor in this car. So it's still got the EGR manifold in that on it. AH. Let's see if we can get this bottom one out of here without taking that solenoid off. It just makes it easier if that solenoid's out of the way. Especially for putting the bolt, getting the bolt started again, you can get your finger in there better. Okay, come on. I wish this would come out. Oh, there we go. Decided to cooperate. Thank you. It's been cut off. Very common for people to, there should be a little mushroom head on here. And then when you turn the key off, the solenoid, and it cuts off the fuel for the idle circuit. So obviously this thing didn't idle right or something like that. These 34 PICTs are pretty finicky when it comes to idling in the idle circuit. They have a separate idle circuit. They actually idle with the throttle completely closed. So they can be very finicky. Hopefully we get this one rebuilt and it will be okay. We'll have to get another solenoid. That ain't a big deal. Yep, this one nut is gonna be make me take it off, I suppose, all the way with the wrench. Come on, you know what happened? The whole stud came, that's why. That's okay. We'll have to put a new hose on there, not that that's really used anymore. Yeah, they even got it plugged off. So essentially, that's how easy it is to take a carburetor off. Well, not the easiest. I had to cuss a little bit. You got 2 bolts, a couple wires, a couple hoses. So where we're going to work on it, I don't know if there's any gas in the carburetor. Oh yeah, a little bit yet. Okay, let's move you over here. A little bit better. We got our carburetor kit. Got a new fuel filter. Put our nuts and bolts in there. So basically there's 5 bolts that hold the top of the carburetor on. We're gonna take those off. We want to take our spring loose here first. Put that in our bowl of parts. Yeah, like I said, it looks like it could be the original motor. It's even got the dash spot still on it. Those usually disappear over time. I don't know how many miles you're in on the car. It's a good question. But yeah, this, you know, when something hasn't been running in a while, in a long time, just take the carburetor apart. It's just not worth trying to make sure it runs. It's likely dirty. We'll see what it looks like in there. Okay. Now that gasket's definitely shot. Here's our float. You got a little thing that helps hold the float down. Pushes it there, it keeps the float from coming up out of the bowl. She's stuck in there. Well, yeah, she's gooey inside there. Lose your little pin that the float pivots on. She definitely dirty and gummed up in there from sitting. Guess I wouldn't expect it to be anything but. Today's gases, you're best if you don't drive your VW a lot to put non-ethanol in. If you're going to drive it on a regular basis and your compression and everything is set up correctly, you're okay to run, you know, the low grade, the 87 with ethanol. I actually do run that in most of my vehicles, but I drive them a lot, like my 57 bus out there. We just got back from a 5-day trip up to Madeline Island in Lake Superior. So if you're driving it a lot, you're getting the fuel through the system, so it doesn't have time to so this is how this is together. It's got that spring in there in our diaphragm. Now it looks like, you know, I had gas in there to run and was pumping it. Doesn't look like anything was getting into the accelerator pump. It's kind of crusty in there. But anyway, back to the fuel thing. If you're not running it a lot, the ethanol tends to gel up when it sits, and it doesn't just turn to varnish, is kind of the term that I always used to use, it where it turns kind of yellowish or it has that weird smell, but it actually turns into like a gel, and it just really gums stuff up. So if you're not going to drive it, then run non-ethanol. Or what I'll do is at the end of the season, I will run it low and then I'll put some non-ethanol in while it's sitting for the winter. But anyway, so I'm taking the jets out here. We've got a jet right there. This is our idle jet we're going to take out to clean. Put all my jets right up here. We've got, this is our accelerator jet. So when you give the throttle, it will squirt down in there. There's some balls in here. They're like check valves. Hopefully they're still loose in there. We'll find out as we go along. A lot of times these get plugged up. Very common for this idle jet to get plugged. Kind of goes with that whole scenario that I was telling you with these 34 PICTs not idling very well. A lot of times if your VW is not idling, you pop that idle jet out and it will be plugged. And if you clean it, it'll idle again. So this here is for to get at the main jet. Let me take this little cover off. And it doesn't look like they have no. Well, this has been off before because there should be like a little sealing washer on here. Yeah, I don't see it, so they must have lost that and put it back in. But then our main jet is right here. So we're going to go in with our screwdriver to get it free. And there's our main jet. So it ain't plugged or gelled up, it's just kind of gunked up in there. We've got another, I'm trying to remember what they call this jet here on the side. I've got to go get a different screwdriver. Aftermarket carburetor, like a lot of times they'll have, it looks like two idle jets coming out of there. like a pilot jet. The Solex carburetors don't. They have this little cover here, and then there's a little jet inside there. Now you can take that jet out. I usually leave it in there. Yeah. I'm going to leave it in there because it's a big enough hole that when I put this in the ultrasonic cleaner, it'll clean that up. Instead of trying to get a screwdriver in, and a lot of times it's really hard to get it out of there and you kind of mess it up. So it's one of those where sometimes it's best just to leave it. Then we've got our idle speed. It's our air bypass screw. This is how you set the idle on the 34 PICT. You do not set it with the throttle position. And I'll show you how that gets set up after we put this back together. Basically this, like I said, there's that separate idle circuit. That's how these run with the throttle closed. So that's just basically, this is, you know, it's letting how much air go through. The same as if opening this up. It's letting air go by. That's why it's called the air bypass screw. And then it comes out this big hole right here. And that's what gives you your idle. So you vary your idle speed that way. And then we have our idle mixture screw. And that's just a regular needle setup. Okay, that's everything that can come off of here. I usually don't, you know, when you're cleaning it up, you could take all this stuff apart if you want. If I'm doing a restoration, I'll go through and take everything off and I replate everything. But in this particular scenario, I'm just gonna leave that stuff there. It'll clean itself up in the ultrasonic cleaner. All of our jets are out. I'm going to leave the check balls in for the accelerator pump, and we'll hope that they're free in there, and we'll pump some fuel through there when we get it all cleaned out. If they're not, I'll show you how to take them out. I prefer not to take them out if I don't have to. It's easy to lose. They're not the easiest. You got a little pin here, and it's usually not plugged up, so we'll leave it at that. So that's the bottom half of our carburetor. When I put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, I'll usually put my screws like this back on. That way they get cleaned easily in there. You can always put them in a separate pail or something of that nature. Okay. So on the top portion, we've got our choke. It's got 3 screws that hold that on. And what happens is this, now it's not going to, oh yeah, okay, it's rotating. We can set our choke tension here, which our choke is actually, oh, there it's working, it's freed up. I'll show you how I set that later. As the power goes through the choke here, there's a heating element that you can't necessarily see it, but behind here there's a spring. It's a heating element, and when it gets warm, this spring will relax, and that's how your choke works. It'll allow it to open. So now we've got to get this little plastic cover off. Let's take this front off first. This little setup here, I don't know the exact terminology for it, but when your choke is on, and I suppose I'm gonna go get a pliers here to take that off. So when your engine is cold, your choke is on, and you're going fast. Yep, it broke. Fortunately, I have a ton of these laying around, so you're going to want to be much more careful. They're hard to get out without breaking. Oh, that ain't so bad. But here's your spring hooks on here. So here's our choke is wide open. The spring shuts it. And now when it's closed and you are going down the road, it's going to run overly rich. You're not getting enough air coming through here. So this little diaphragm in here, there's a spring in there too. There's a vacuum port here, in here, and that vacuum port comes down, and so when there's excessive vacuum down below, it will suck this vacuum out like this, and that will force your choke. I'm going to exaggerate it, but it'll force your choke to open up some, overcome the spring. So that's what that setup is for. But to get this out, this diaphragm will come in the rebuild kit, you just push that way and you can pull this out of there. Now, yep, I need a bigger. So basically this is our needle and seat. The fuel line here comes in, the fuel comes in. Inside, you've got your float. When the float bowl fills up, it closes your needle and seat. Hopefully you can see that. That's kind of what's happening. So as the fuel level goes down, opens up the valve. It just kind of a constant opening and closing. A lot of times these will get bad and they won't close off tight, and you'll get, the fuel will just keep coming in. But that just screws out of there. Keep track of your washer. So essentially that's all I take off on the top. I mean, you can go through and take all this stuff off, your choke and your butterfly and all that, and replate it, but that's not the scope of this particular project. So let's take these little screws and put them in here. So they get cleaned up. We can put our little choke thing back on temporarily. Come on. This way everything gets cleaned. And we got our 4 screws here for the accelerator pump. This. Now put our cap back in here. I believe the new kit comes with the little sealing washer that we need. So now, let me take you with me, and let's go over and put this stuff in the ultrasonic cleaner. The ultrasonic cleaner works really well. I've cleaned it out. Fresh solution in there. Basically, it's just I just have water and I use this super clean. I've had good luck with this stuff over the years for cleaning grease and stuff, and it just, they don't put very much of that. It's mostly water. So we basically, we're gonna put them in here. And we're gonna start it. So I've got it set for initially here 99 minutes. I'm gonna let it sit and do its thing. It's basically it's vibrating the water, and it's attacking that dirt, and it's kind of neat how it works. So what I'll do is I'll bring you back over here when it's clean after our time is gone, and we'll show you what we have, and then we can put our carburetor back together. So we'll see you in at least an hour and a half. All right.